So now we talked about the UN. What is the UN doing about this? What is happening right now in Sudan? Earlier this year, I think it was in May, Sudan Armed Forces (SAF) brought a case to the International Court of Justice, and it was concerning the fact that the United Arab Emirates have been accused for a long time for intervening in the strife that is going on in Sudan. And they have been accused of arming militias, namely RSF, in the western part of Sudan. And these militias have been committing genocide in this country. So by extension, the Sudan Armed Forces were claiming that the United Arab Emirates are violating the Genocide Convention by supporting these militias that are then committing genocide in the country. Now, the United Arab Emirates has since denied this, and they continue to deny that they are in any way involved in what is going on in Sudan. But it begs the question, like, why would this allegations be brought if there is no evidence to them? And the United Nations has concluded that the situation that is going on in West Sudan is classified as genocide. And back in 2024, Amnesty International did put out a report that said was an armored car that was captured in that region that was a United Arab Emirates manufactured armored car. So what was it doing in Western Sudan? That's the question. Just recently, the Rapid Support Forces claim to have, just this week, they claim to have destroyed a plane in Ayala Airport in the western part of Sudan that was carrying Colombian fighters. This plane, they claim, was a United Arab Emirates plane, and it was carrying Colombian fighters. And the assumption was that these fighters were meant to go and give assistance to the Rapid Support Forces. Now, I don't know if these allegations are true. It still remains to be proven, because also the Sudan Armed Forces did not give any evidence to this claim. But it's the fact that other reputable organizations have noticed things that are related to United Arab Emirates that have directly been found in Sudan that begs the question of, if they are not supporting any forces in the western part of Sudan, why are these things constantly being found? And the United Nations also did confirm that Colombian fighters have been present in the western part of Sudan since at least as early as 2023 or 2024. And so if this Colombian fighters are in any way related to the United Arab Emirates, then this should be a case. The reason why I actually mentioned this case that was brought to the International Court of Justice is to shed some light on what the United Nations is actually doing when it's been confirmed that it's a humanitarian crisis, there are war crimes, there is genocide, but yet there is really no effective intervention, the United Nations. This case that was brought to the International Court of Justice was basically thrown out. I'm going to put up that report. So, right, this happened in May of 2025. The reason why the International Court of Justice claimed that, or they threw this out, was because they claimed that it was not their jurisdiction to handle a case like this. Because of the fact that even though Sudan and the United Arab Emirates did sign the Genocide Convention, the United Arab Emirates actually opted out of the amendment of that convention that stated that states could actually go and sue each other for cases like this, or for accuse each other and bring it to the International Court of Justice for genocide. The fact that the International Court of Justice for a long time has not really been able to effectively carry out justice. And that's not only an issue with the International Court of Justice, it's an issue with the UN Charter altogether. This organization, the United Nations, was supposed to be an organization that helped bring peace throughout the world. When you look at the Charter of the United Nations, it should have been effective. It should be effective when you look at it on face value. But when you look at the organization of the United Nations, you understand why this organization is not at all effective. So this is the exact charter of the United Nations, and the purpose, based on the articles of this charter, it's basically in four folds, right? So the first one is to maintain international peace and security, and to that end, to take effective collective measures to the prevention and removal of threats to the peace, right? So maintaining peace internationally. There's hardly been a situation where this has been achieved by the United Nations since its establishment in 1949. The second one is that to develop friendly relations among nations based on respect for the principle of equal right and self-determination of people, and to take appropriate measures to strengthen universal peace. Again, it keeps talking about strengthening universal peace and peace of people, but based on the organization of the United Nations, which we would go into in a second, you can understand why none of these measures would have ever been achieved. The third one, achieving international cooperation amongst nations. International cooperation in solving problems which are economic, social, cultural, and of humanitarian character. They have not done any of this, or they barely are able to do any of this because they cannot bring themselves to decide when any of these things are actually happening. And it's supposed to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations in the attainment of these common ends, or the ends that we just mentioned. But again, as I mentioned, when you look at the organization, the different organs of the United Nations, it makes sense why none of these things are able to be achieved. Because the United Nations as is, again, is made up of the General Assembly, then there's the United Nations Security Council, and then there's the International Court of Justice. And there's some economic committees, secretariat. But the main organs of the United Nations are the International Court of Justice and the United Nations Security Council. But the way the United Nations Security Council is set, 5 permanent members and 10 that come in on a rotational role. The 5 permanent members, the United States, Great Britain, France, China, and Russia. And for anything, any proposal that's brought to the Security Council, for it to be carried through, it has to have at least 9 votes of the 15. Not only that, the 5 permanent members basically have veto power when it comes to voting. So if any of the 5 permanent members vote no, then that resolution essentially dies. It makes you wonder, why would something like this, why would a structure like this ever have been set? Because the United Nations, as we know it today, is basically a representation of the League of Nations. The League of Nations did not succeed. And if we are learning from history, if we're learning from our mistakes, we would have seen or noticed why the League of Nations did not succeed. The League of Nations had similar charters. It had similar goals. It had similar purposes: promoting peace around the world, promoting self-determination around the world, promoting political liberty around the world. and sovereignty of states around the world. But it did not succeed. Why? Because there was no enforcement of anything that came through the League of Nations. There had to be unanimity in voting in the League of Nations. All of those reasons were why they were just thought to be posturing organizations and not actually effectively achieving the agenda that the organization was set for. You're supposed to learn from your history. You're supposed to learn why the League of Nations did not succeed. An organization that's supposed to carry out similar goals, you're supposed to set it in a way that gives it a shot of actually succeeding. But then we go and set the Security Council that gives veto power to 5 nations who have contrasting ideologies. Because anything the US would vote yes for, Russia or China would probably vote no for, and vice versa. So how are you ever going to be able to achieve anything? How are you ever going to be able to achieve anything when you have a structure that is set like that? It brings me to the International Court of Justice. You look at the International Court of Justice, what are they really able to do? Well, yeah, they're able to prosecute states. They're able to actually carry out some form of justice. But because of the fact that there is no way to actually enforce this justice, the prosecutions always end up not really amounting to anything. Look at what happened between Israel and Palestine. The International Court of Justice did find Israel committing genocide in Palestine. They were the state of Israel was indicted, but nothing really changed because there was no enforcement. And again, when you go to the Security Council, the US, being a backer of Israel, basically vetoes anything that anybody wants to do. And so nothing ever really gets achieved. So if these organizations were set to protect people, to enforce peace, and to encourage friendly collaboration amongst nations based on dignity, and you have their organs set in this way, how are you going to ever be able to achieve those ends? And so if you have organs that cannot achieve the ends that you set out to achieve, these organs need to either be revised or they need to be disassembled. Like the United Nations either needs to revise its charter on organization or it needs to be disassembled. And we need to find something else that actually works and that actually helps the people when they need these organizations.